Hello, this is Alexandra Kitty, and this is season 2 of Officer Down. Last season, season 1, it was what you would expect. Police officer dies in the line of duty. That was the theme of season 1. Season 2 now is going to take a different turn. The difference now is we're going to be looking at cases where the victim was a police officer, but in different kinds of circumstances when they were off duty and they may have been killed by a spouse or a colleague or a friend. So it's not what we would think of when we think of a murdered police officer. It's, when the protector becomes the victim. So the next 6 episodes of the season is going to look at something entirely different. And season 3 will take us in different directions as well. So today we're going to discuss MPD Detective Timothy Francis. On November 27th, 2020, the day after Thanksgiving, Detective Timothy Eugene Francis, a 50-year-old homicide detective with the Metropolitan Police Department, MPD, in Washington, D.C., was found shot to death in his home in Waldorf, Maryland. Beside him was the body of his wife, Christina Lynn Francis, 41. Evidence recovered at the scene indicated that Christina had shot her husband before turning the gun on herself. The tragedy devastated both the MPD and the broader D.C. law enforcement community, with Chief Peter Dusham stating, Detective Francis spent 2 decades protecting the community from violence, and to learn that he was the victim of a homicide is heartbreaking. So let's talk a little bit about our victim here. Detective Timothy Eugene Francis. He was born on March 7, 1970 in Washington, D.C. to Susan W. Wood and the late James V. Francis Jr. Growing up in the nation's capital, Tim attended Maryland parochial and public schools before graduating from Friendly High School in 1988. He earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore in 1992. Tim's decision to become a police officer was deeply rooted in his family's legacy. His father, James V. Francis Jr., served nearly 45 years as a detective with the Metropolitan Police Department. The D.C. Police Union later tweeted, Tim was a second-generation police officer who followed in his father's footsteps. His father was also a detective that worked nearly 45 years for MPD. It was always Tim's dream to follow his father's footsteps and become a police officer, his obituary noted. So Tim began his law enforcement career with the Fairfax County Police Department before joining the Metropolitan Police Department in 2000. Over the course of his 20-year career with the MPD, he rose to the rank of detective and was most recently assigned to the homicide branch, working with the Natural Squad. During his distinguished career, Detective Francis worked nearly 400 investigations, received numerous awards and commendations, including recognition from the U.S. Attorney Office. He earned a Medal of Valor and a Medal of Honor for exceptional bravery and willingness to go above and beyond the call of duty. The D.C. Police Union memorialized him as one of the best detectives in CID and a stand-up guy who always held his ground. So career-wise, he was exceptional, and he seemed to really enjoy what he did. Now let's talk a little bit about his personal life. Detective Francis was a devoted father to 5 children, 3 sons, Tavon Adakere, James Timothy, and Chase McKinley, and 2 daughters, Diana Dashia and Kennedy Lilise. Beyond his police work, Tim was deeply involved in his community. He joined Ebenezer AME Church on March 19, 1995, by sang with the Kingsman Choir and was a member of the Anointed Horsemen's motorcycle ministry. He was also road captain of the Flaming Knight Motorcycle Club in Waldorf, Maryland, and a proud member of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. Neighbors and friends described him as someone who loved socializing and never missed an opportunity for a good laugh. He enjoyed dancing, watching Washington Redskins games, traveling, coaching youth football, and riding his motorcycle. One neighbor recalled first meeting him while he was blasting go-go music on his front lawn, a detail that captured his vibrant, community-oriented personality. Now let's talk about Christina. Christina Lynn Francis, 41, was Timothy's wife. The couple had been married for 6 years and shared 2 teenage children from Christina's previous relationships. In the early morning hours of November 27, 2020, more than 12 hours before their bodies would be discovered, Christina posted a series of deeply concerning messages on Facebook, many riddled with typos suggesting emotional distress or possible impairment. At 3:19 a.m., she posted a video from their wedding day with the caption, "This day meant everything to me. The marriage wasn't put together for a great reason, couldn't be more confident, and stayed forever not giving up. I love you and what we had together. You all I even wanted, needed. You and I belonged together then and always. We had 6 years of experience and memories that should have taken precedence over everything in everything we did, but got lost in petty you believed was a mistake. AMD tests immature." At 3 a.m., in her final post, Christina wrote about her 2 teenage children. "My children are my pride and joy. I pray they follow, never dream, Trey, they have, and then something illegible, Jace, the strength for it. They are perfect creations that deserve all life has to offer him. I love you both with my heart." Christina also updated her cover photo and profile picture to images of the couple together during this time. So let's talk about the place, Waldorf, Maryland. Waldorf is an unincorporated community in Charles County, Maryland, located approximately 23 miles south of Washington, D.C. As of 2020, Waldorf had a population of approximately 77,711 people, making it one of the largest unincorporated communities in the United States. The Francis family lived in the 3300 block of Marilee Court in a residential neighborhood. As for its crime statistics, into 2020 crime data, the Waldorf crime rate per 100,000 residents, the total crime was 2,675, 25% higher than the national average. Violent crime, 456, which was 25% higher than the national average. Property crime, 1,218. As for the Maryland state crime rates in 2020, murder was up 5.5% from 2019, so there was 573 total murders. The total crime index was minus 15.35%, a decrease from 2019. The crime was minus 10.10, which was a decrease of that much from 2019. Family members as offenders accounted for 6.4% of total murders in Maryland in 2020. So let's talk about the timeline of the incident. So early morning, Friday, November 27th, 2020. Between 3:19 a.m. and 3:27 a.m., Christina Francis posts a series of concerning messages on Facebook, including a wedding video and emotional tributes to her husband and children. The posts contain numerous typos and suggest emotional distress. Daytime, Friday, November 27th, 2020. Throughout the day, a family member of Christina Francis, identified as her father in some reports, attempts to repeatedly contact both Christina and Timothy by phone, but receives no response. Approximately 6 p.m., growing increasingly worried, Christina's family member goes to the couple's home at the 3300 block of Marilee Court in Waldorf to check on them. Upon arrival, the family member enters the home and discovers both Timothy and Christina dead. He immediately calls 911. At 6 p.m. or about, Charles County Sheriff's Office deputies respond to the 911 call reporting 2 people deceased in the home. The crime scene investigation, deputies secure the scene and begin processing evidence. Detectives recover evidence indicating that Christina Lynn Francis shot her husband Timothy before turning the gun on herself. The investigation was led by Charles County Sheriff's Office, as the incident occurred in their jurisdiction, in Charles County, Maryland, rather than Washington, D.C., where Timothy worked. As for the aftermath, on Saturday, November 28, 2020, the Metropolitan Police Department issued a statement. It's with heavy hearts that the Metropolitan Police Department announces that MPD Detective Timothy Francis, most recently assigned to the Homicide Unit's Natural Squad, tragically passed away. Francis was shot and killed in a domestic-related homicide yesterday in Charles County, Maryland. The suspect was also found deceased at the scene. This case is currently under investigation by the Charles County Sheriff's Office. Francis had 20 years of dedicated service with the Metropolitan Police Department. MPD Chief Peter Newsham added, "Mourning the tragic loss of our colleague and friend is extremely difficult. Detective Francis spent 2 decades protecting the community from violence, and to learn that he was a victim of a homicide is heartbreaking." The D.C. Police Union tweeted, "Tim was one of the best detectives in CID. His father was also a detective that worked nearly 45 years for MPD. Tim was a stand-up guy and always held his ground. We're all still reeling from the news. The MPD has lost a true detective today, and he will not soon be replaced. Neighbors suppressed shock and disbelief. One neighbor who had socialized with Tim just weeks before told reporters, "I knew him just 2 years and I'm going to miss him. Every time I come home on a Friday, I'm going to look over and imagine him playing his go-go music on his front lawn. I knew he was a family man. He loved his kids." On Sunday, December 6, 2020, viewing was held from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Briscoe Tonic Funeral Home on 2294 Old Washington Road in Waldorf, Maryland. On Monday, December 7th, 2020, viewing began at 9 a.m., followed by a funeral service at 11 a.m. at Temple of Praise Church on 709 Southern Avenue Southeast in Washington, D.C. Interment followed at Resurrection Cemetery at 8000 Woodyard Road in Clinton, Maryland. Now let's talk a little bit about the irony of the homicide detective as a victim. Detective Francis spent his entire career investigating homicides, piecing together evidence, interviewing witnesses, and bringing justice to families of murder victims. Yet in the end, he himself became a homicide victim, killed not by a stranger or a criminal he was pursuing, but hit by his own wife in the sanctuary of their home. Chief Newsom's observation that Francis spent 2 decades protecting the community from violence and to learn that he was a victim of a homicide is heartbreaking, captures the profound tragedy and the irony of the case. The Francis case highlights the hidden risks of domestic violence within law enforcement households. Despite his training, experience, and ability to recognize danger, Detective Francis could not protect himself from violence in his own home. Family members as offenders account for about 6.4% of all murders in Maryland in 2020, reflecting the national reality that intimate partner violence remains one of the most dangerous threats to personal safety. Christina's early morning Facebook posts, filled with emotional turmoil, regret, and references to marital problems, serve as a tragic example of how digital footprints can reveal mental health crises that go unnoticed or unaddressed until it's too late. Her posts suggest unresolved marital conflicts, possible feelings of abandonment or betrayal, and deep emotional distress in the hours before she took her husband's life and her own. Detective Francis leaves behind a legacy of service spanning 2 generations. His father served nearly 45 years with the MPD. Tim himself served 20 years, working nearly 400 investigations and earning the department's highest honors for bravery. His 5 children, 3 sons and 2 daughters, now carry forward the family name without their father. The murder-suicide of Detective Timothy Francis and his wife Christina on November 27, 2020, stands as a heartbreaking reminder that even those who dedicate their lives to protecting others from violence can become victims in their own homes. A second-generation police officer, decorated homicide detective, devoted father, and beloved community leader, Tim Francis spent 2 decades solving murders, yet his own death remains a stark illustration of the unpredictable and often invisible nature of domestic violence. His legacy as one of the best detectives in MPD history will endure, but the tragedy of his death underscores the urgent need for mental health resources, domestic violence intervention, and support systems for law enforcement families facing crisis. So that's sadness. You work all your life. You think you've done the right thing, married the right person, gone in the right career that should help you see the warning signs, and it doesn't work. Not always. And that's something we need to, consider, that we often don't see things that are closest to us. So next week is a different case, and I will talk to you next week. Goodbye.